Paramount, you might want to have your lawyers on standby because you are really pushing that line in terms of copyright infringement. Yeah, I just saw If, which, it is quite similar to a certain TV show that I grew up with, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, but I'll try and put that to the side for now. There might be a couple of points left. But either way, judging this movie as its own thing, what did I think of it? It was, not that great. It wasn't a bad movie, I wouldn't say, but it wasn't a particularly good one either. I feel kind of bad saying it, because I feel like there was definitely effort put into this movie, but I don't think it turned out too well. At the very least, I can tell you that the marketing is kind of misleading, because if you saw the trailers, you probably assume Ryan Reynolds' character is the main protagonist of the movie. No, it is not. It is this... The movie is actually about this 12-year-old girl named B, who, big shock, I'm sure you've never seen this in a movie before, her mother has died. Yeah, I know, never seen something like that happen. I know, that's kind of messed up, but it has been done many times. So basically I don't think she's moving. I think it's supposed to be like spending the summer with her grandma because her father, played by John Krasinski, who also directed the film, is sick. He needs some kind of operation. Yeah, they never really elaborate on. He says he has a broken heart, so I guess he has some issues with his heart, but yeah, they never actually say what it is. So what specifically, it is left completely up to the imagination, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. So basically, Bee is spending some time with her grandma while her father is in the hospital, and she frequently goes to see him every once in a while, but one night, while she's out on her own, because of course 12-year-olds can patrol the streets of New York totally fine, she winds up seeing this strange creature, but she isn't able to get a good look at it. That is until at least a couple of nights later, might be the next night, honestly I don't remember, it's not important. She sees it again, along with another one, and they're with this guy trying to break into a house or something. Either way, she winds up fainting, she wakes up the next day and discovers they are of course imaginary friends, or ifs, as they like to be called. There's this one named Blossom, who's this kind of like 1930s-esque bug dancer girl, and the other is a big purple blob, but because his creator was colorblind, his name is not purple, his name is Blue. Yeah, an imaginary friend character that's a big blob named Blue. Gee, that sounds familiar. But anyway, it turns out they live with this guy named Cal, who is played by Ryan Reynolds, and what is his connection to the imaginary friends? That actually does come into play later, but how does B able to see them? Because they establish pretty quickly that they can only see their imaginary friends, at least I think is what it's supposed to be, but she can see them randomly despite her not being the ones who made them. Yeah, it's never really explained how that works. But anyway, turns out Cal is part of a, I guess, population program or reintroduction program. I don't know what the exact terminology is, but basically their kids have grown up and forgotten about them, so they can't see them anymore. And as such, he is trying to relocate, that's the better word, them to find new kids. But the problem is, for the most part, none of it going as well. Like I said, that house they were trying to get into was trying to get a new kid for Blue, and it did not go well. She barely even reacted. Needless to say, it's a bit of a mess. So B, completely out of nowhere, for like no reason, I guess because she just thinks it'll be interesting or she needs a distraction, again, not really explained, she decides to help Cal out, and he begrudgingly agrees. So let's get into the problems with this movie. One of the first big one being, not much happens, really. We're just kind of sitting around with the characters and stuff, which they're not awful characters, but they feel pretty generic, and there's not really much interesting about them. Like I said, B, I guess, has an arc, like she, in the beginning, says, I'm not a kid anymore, I want to be an adult, so it's pretty clear to guess what her arc is, and it's passable, like it does the job fine. Cal is honestly just there. I mean, Ryan Reynolds is a very charming actor, and I think he does a decent enough job. It's just he's not written very interesting. And again, most of the imaginary friends, they're fine, I guess. They don't really have much of a defining personality. I mean, Blue kind of likes to make people happy and laugh, I guess, but again, he doesn't really do that much. Blossom is also pretty generic. We meet a few other ones along the way, but again, they don't really do much, and it's a shame because they have interesting designs. A lot of them are really creative, but they don't do anything with them. Hell, most of them are barely in the movie. And another problem with this movie, it is not very funny. Like, there are plenty of moments where you can tell it is trying hard to get a laugh, and there are a couple of chuckles here and there. There are some decent decent lines, but I did not laugh very much during this movie. And again, I feel bad because I feel like there was definitely effort put into it. Like, the actors are definitely trying with the material that they're given. There was effort put into animating the ifs. They admittedly don't look real, but they do look good. Their expressions, the textures, their movement and stuff, all of that is very well done. And again, they're pretty well designed. It's just this script, I feel like, either needed a bit more tweaking or focus or just something, because this is not a very interesting story or characters, and as a result, it's kind of hard to get invested in the movie. But without a doubt, the biggest problem that this movie has is the world building. Like I said, it is never really established why Bee can see all of these other imaginary friends. Again, Cal's connection to them is brought up later. I guess I won't spoil it because it's the very end of the movie, but either way, there is some explanation for that. But either way, they never really go in depth as to why she can see the stuff, and they also don't make it clear how this world works, specifically, like, where the imaginary friends, they're created by the kids, I guess, so I guess they just appear out of nowhere. Again, that's not really elaborated on. Whether or not they can be seen by other kids or not, whether or not any of them have been relocated before, again, is never elaborated on. I feel like there were some ideas they could have done with it, but it's just not explained. You kind of just have to accept it for what it is, but it can be a little confusing. There are a couple interesting ideas, like we find out that most of the ifs live in literally this glorified retirement home, which is a little clever. I feel like stuff like that has been done before, but it's at least a decent enough idea. But then they go in an idea that I feel like both had potential, but also was not elaborated on, is that Bee can literally alter the way the retirement home looks however she wants. And again, that is not explained why. Is it just because of her? Can anyone come into this retirement home and see what it's like? Like, how does this work? It doesn't make any sense. It is really hard to follow. Now, I will admit, this movie does get a bit more interesting towards the third act. I guess this is a spoiler, technically, but I feel like I should bring this up because this was probably one of the better things in the movie, is while she's visiting her father, Bee sees this young boy who's also in the hospital. She befriends him and decides to offer him the chance to have one of the ifs as his imaginary friend, but he can't see them. They go through this whole process of, like, interviewing them, writing them down, they bring him in and stuff, but no matter how hard he tries, he cannot see any of them. But then Bee has this discussion with this bear if, who was, like, the founder of the retirement home, and she decides that instead of trying to find new kids for the ifs, she should try and reunite them with their original ones. And honestly, I think that's an interesting idea. I will admit, I did not expect it to go in that direction. I think it would have been better if they established that a bit early on. That might have been a bit more interesting story, but I think what it's done is decent enough. And again, mild spoilers, they do find both Blossom and Blue's kids now that they've grown up, and I will admit I didn't think I would like the way they do it at first, but the way they do it is actually legit pretty clever. I won't give it away in case you do plan on seeing this movie, but the way they do it is pretty interesting. I didn't expect it to be like that, but it worked pretty well. As a whole, the third act is definitely where the movie picks up and gets a lot more interesting. Admittedly, some parts are a little predictable, but most of the emotional moments do honestly work. You can tell these actors are trying, and again, that's one thing I can give the movie credit for, is all of the actors are legit pretty solid, both the on-camera ones and the voice actors for the ifs, which, this movie has a weirdly stacked voice cast. I mean, you have Steve Carell voicing Blue, which that one's not too surprising, but then you have people like Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, and George Clooney in this, just to name a few, so I was like, yeah, but again, they're barely in the movie, so, like, that doesn't really amount to too much, but either way, the actors do a solid job. You can tell there was a lot of heart put into this movie, which is why I feel kind of bad criticizing it as much as I do, but I really feel like it could have used a bit more thought, because as it stands, this movie is watchable. It wasn't a complete waste of time, but I have no desire to watch it again. If you're curious, or you got some kids that you want to take to see it, I think it's fine enough, but it is a movie that you can definitely afford to skip. I wouldn't say it's bad, but I wouldn't say it's particularly good either. It's perfectly okay. I give it a middle-of-the-road 5 out of 10.